What's up, friend, and welcome back to another video here on the channel. And today, Tarkir Dragonstorm has finally launched on MTG Arena, and if you're anything like me, you're very much eager to play with the new cards. So I figured I would make a video where I will talk to you about the best cards that I would craft on day one of Tarkir Dragonstorm, now that I have experience from playing on the early access streamer event as well. Now, I will also talk a little bit about the cards that I would avoid. Before we dive into everything, there needs to be a big warning, because the best thing you can do with your wild cards is wait till about 2 weeks from now when the meta is settling a little bit and we have competitive results on what cards are actually performing well. But for those of you who cannot wait, I hope this is a helpful guide, so let's dive right into it. So up first on my list of cards that I would craft on day one of Tarkir Dragonstorm is, of course, our new Planeswalker, Ashlizzlle Stormslayer. Now, Ashlizzlle is a 5 mana Planeswalker, 5 loyalty, with a static effect. If one or more tokens would be created under your control, twice as many of those tokens are created instead. The uptick +1, you create a 1/1 white soldier creature token, which basically means you make 2 of them because of the static effect. The 0 is put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control. Those creatures gain flying until your next turn, which is a really valuable line of text, until your next turn. It was quite relevant for me during the streamer event. And obviously the 0 effect is just a huge finisher in any deck that tries to go wide a little bit, or, you know, has tokens of any kind. Like, it was just unreal how powerful it was. And the -3, destroy target creature an opponent controls at mana value 3 or greater. I think this is also very important. You know, the card can protect itself, and there's a lot of decks in the format right now that'll have a creature with mana value 3 or greater, so you'll always be able to hit something with Ashlizzlle. But in general, this card just does so much, you know, like flooding the board, having a finisher, and being able to protect itself is basically everything you're looking for in a Planeswalker. And then simultaneously, the card slots into a wide variety of decks that are already being played in the format. Think about those white token control decks that play Caretaker's Talent. Think about maybe the blue-white synthesizer decks. I will be experimenting by shoving this card in the Ashlizzlle Cage deck, because I think it's just a fantastic target to hit with the Cage. But also, you know, the Ashlizzlle Cage deck wants to go wide anyways, so being able to have it be a finisher or doubling my tokens or putting more like tokens on the board is just huge. Could even see this card maybe being played in blue-white control as a finisher. I think there's just a lot of potential in this card, a lot of flexibility, and everything that it does is just powerful. So this card will see play in a top-tier deck one way or another, in my opinion. So I think Ashlizzlle Stormslayer is your first safe craft if you were to craft something. Now up next, we have Sarkhan Dragon Ascendant. Now, I know some of you guys are very eager to play with a dragon deck on day one. Not that I'm necessarily saying you should put all your wildcards towards a dragon deck on day one, but if you're planning on, make sure to at least include 3 copies, or ideally 4, of Sarkhan Dragon Ascendant. Now, Sarkhan is a 2 mana 2/2 legendary creature, and when Sarkhan enters, you may behold a dragon. If you do, create a treasure token. So in order to behold a dragon, choose a dragon you control or reveal a dragon card from your hand. Whenever a dragon you control enters, you put a 1/1 counter on Sarkhan, and until the end of turn, it becomes a dragon in addition to its other types and gains flying. Now, in any dragon deck that I ended up playing during the streamer event, and any like powerful start I had, Sarkhan was always going to be a part of that. It's just super important, especially for a dragon deck in standard, to go from 2 mana to 4 mana, because 4 mana is that sweet spot where all those like powerful dragons start popping up. So Sarkhan, especially into Magmatic Hellkite or something, was ridiculous. So yeah, if you're doing any dragon shenanigans, Sarkhan is going to have to be a part of that one way or another, in my opinion. Also, all the good dragons, or a lot of the good dragons, are in red, so I would always recommend sticking in red one way or another. You could be in 3 colors too, but Sarkhan just does so much with the fixing of the treasure, the ramping of it, and also being just great payoff for playing a ton of dragons and applying the pressure with the 1/1 counter and the flyer. So Sarkhan really impressed me, and in my opinion, an auto include if you're playing dragons in standard. So up next on my list, and I already teased it a little bit, is the Magmatic Hellkite. This is a 4 mana 4/5 dragon with flying. When this creature enters, you destroy target non-basic land an opponent controls. Its controller searches their library for a basic land card, puts it onto the battlefield tapped with a stun counter on it, and then shuffles. So, in my opinion, the Magmatic Hellkite is the best dragon to come out of Tarkir Dragonstorm. You know, it's in just the red color, so you can put it in a wide variety of dragon decks if you'd like. But this card, especially on the play, is just a huge, huge tempo play. And imagine that not on turn 4, but on turn 3, perhaps with Sarkhan. It's going to be absolutely devastating for your opponent. I have been on the receiving end of a turn 3 Magmatic Hellkite, and let me tell you, that game felt impossible to win because it was just way too difficult to catch up. Now, Magmatic Hellkite with the destruction effect is actually really relevant in Standard. The top tier deck Esper Self-Bounds only plays one basic swamp in a deck, so if you manage to get multiple Magmatic Hellkite effects, you'll just be destroying their lands. But also think about, you know, the everywhere tokens, the everywhere lands that get created into Domain, for instance, from the Overlord of the Hauntswoods. You'll be able to destroy that, completely shutting down their full domain, and usually just setting them back a little bit. And the Magmatic Hellkite is just fantastic at that. If you want to craft any dragon on day 1 of Tarkir, I recommend this little guy. You can also play it in, you know, other deck lists. Like I'm currently in the thinking about experimenting with this card in maybe a bounce deck or something, or a blink deck, where I try to really focus on getting the ETB effect a couple times. So there's also more things you can do with this card outside of just playing a dragon deck. Maybe it belongs in a mid-range deck as well to take advantage of winning the coin flip. I just think it's the most powerful dragon from the set. So if you are looking to craft a dragon on day 1, I recommend Magmatic Hellkite. Now up next on my list, we have the Quarry Steel Cutter, 2-mana artifact. Equipped creature gets +1/+1, has trample and haste. Flurry effect, whenever you cast your second spell each turn, you create a 1/1 white monk creature token with prowess. You may attach this equipment to it, an equip cost of 2. Now I had played with a couple of decks that played Quarry Steel Cutter during the streamer event, and anytime I got the Quarry Steel Cutter in play, especially when it had like 2 in play, it would pop off. It was so powerful. Carried certain strategies anyways. Like I played the Jeskai Flurry deck, which in general felt a little bit too weak to do something in Standard. But when I had Quarry Steel Cutter in play, all of a sudden that turned around and my games were actually winnable. So yeah, Quarry Steel Cutter, just like Elspeth, it's just one of those cards that in my eyes is just simply too powerful not to see any play one way or another. You could shove this card into maybe Jeskai Convoke. I've seen people talk about even shoving it in mono red aggro. I've experimented with the card in Boros token control as kind of like an engine that's going to give me tokens into the late game. I think you can play the card very aggressively. I think you can play the card as like a value engine. And yeah, it's just one of those cards that is just too powerful. I think, if I recall correctly, the professor also named this card as one of the most powerful cards in the format. And, you know, the professor knows what he's talking about. So yeah, Quarry Steel Cutter is just very, very good. And we'll see. I think it's definitely one of those cards that is going to do something one way or another. So a safe craft, in my opinion. Up next on my list, we have an artifact that went so under the radar for me, I didn't even include it in my top 10 Tarkir card video. I'm talking about the Herd Heirloom. This is a 2-mana artifact. You can tap it at 1 mana of any color, spend this mana only to cast a creature spell, or you can tap it and until the end of turn, target creature you control with power 4 or greater gains trample. Whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, you get to draw a card. Now, I knew that I wanted to build a like Teamer ramp deck in Tarkir, and before I managed to do that, I ran into Kibbler on the streamer event client. He was playing another ramp deck as well, and was playing the Herd Heirloom in there too, and it just felt unreal to play against, so I figured, obviously, I have to build something with this card myself as well to see what's up, and I did, which was the Teamer ramp deck with Ureni in it, that's already on the channel. And this card was just unreal in there, especially in combination with something like the Lumbering World Wagon, or in general, and a creature with power 4 or greater. But the interaction with the World Wagon especially felt crazy to me. The World Wagon being able to give that card ramp and also drawing cards off of it was just wild. It's exactly what I was looking for in these like ramp decks that I end up building sometimes. And yeah, Herd Heirloom is very fastly going to replace any like 2-drop dork that I might be playing. I could see this card being played in a wide variety of strategies. Think about, you know, like I said, ramp decks or stompy decks, something like mono green, maybe even Gruul Calamity, dinosaurs, you name it. Anything that wants to be stompy or ramp up is going to be a part of it. I really hope that Herd Heirloom is going to be big enough or powerful enough that it's going to push a ramp deck into the tier 2 category. I think it will be. I will even probably experiment with this card in like Simic Cookies or something because I'm simply that impressed by it. It's just kind of like Quarry Steel Cutter and Elspeth. One of those cards that, in my eyes, is just way too powerful to not be good. But yeah, if you're looking to do any of these strategies on day 1 of Tarkir, I feel like this is a safe craft. Like, it's always going to be doing exactly what you need it to do. And it's, yeah, you can't really go wrong with this card, in my opinion. Next on my list, we have the Rutgers Rakshasa, 2-mana 5/5 demon with trample and decayed, so this creature cannot block, and when it attacks, you sacrifice it at the end of combat. And you have that renew effect. For X and 2 black, you can exile this card from your graveyard. So the decayed counter on each of X target creatures activate only as a sorcery. So this card is just going to slot beautifully into these Unholy NX decks, which could either be mono black or Golgari. I would probably recommend crafting like 2 copies of it. I wouldn't do like a full playset or anything, but I just really like the curve of Rutger's Rakshasa into turn 3 Unholy NX. I think the ability also slots really nicely into these, you know, Unholy NX mid-range strategies. I can definitely see people getting value out of the DK counters. So yeah, if you want to, you know, enhance your Unholy NX demon decks, Rutger's Rakshasa, 2 copies, I think you can't really go wrong with that. Next on my list, we have probably the most powerful 1-drop in Tarkir Dragonstorm. I'm of course talking about the Stadium Headliner. 1 mana, 1/1 Goblin Warrior with Mobilize 1. Whenever this creature attacks, you create a tapped and attacking 1/1 Red Warrior creature token, sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. For 2 mana, you have an activated ability where you can sacrifice this creature and it deals damage equal to the number of creatures you control the target creature. This card already slots into a wide variety of decks that are good in standard, like solid tier 2 decks. Think about Goblin aggro, think about Boros tokens, or Jeskai Convoke. I can even see this card maybe being played in mono red aggro, perhaps replacing either Hired Claw or Monastery Swiftspear. I think the card just applies a ton of pressure, and the activated ability has a really sweet effect when you consider it in combination with Screaming Nemesis. Because technically, you can fling this creature towards your own Screaming Nemesis, and you know what that means, dealing damage to any target. So instead of destroying a creature with the activated ability, you can turn it into damage with Screaming Nemesis. And I think that effect could be very relevant, and I think we'll definitely see that be something in standard. So if you're somebody that plays these red aggressive decks, Stadium Headliner could be a very interesting card for you to craft and pick up and experiment with. Up next on my list, we have Tursa Lightshatter, 3 mana 3/3 legendary creature with haste. When Tursa enters, you discard up to 2 cards and then draw that many cards. Whenever Tursa Lightshatter attacks, if there are 7 or more cards in your graveyard, you exile a card at random from your graveyard. You may play that card this turn. So Tursa Lightshatter is going to be an auto-include into Jeskai Oculus, in my opinion, or even those Monument to Endurance decks. This card, I think, would already be playable as a 3 mana 3/3 with haste that had the discard to draw effect on it. But the fact that you have that extra effect where if Tursa attacks, if there are 7 or more cards in your graveyard, you exile a card at random and you get to play that card this turn, just kind of pushes the card over the top for me. It's going to be replaced like Kiora in any of the decks that I have that card into. And yeah, like I said, Jeskai Oculus, Monument to Endurance decks, it's going to just be included in that. The card is just very pushed, and if you are in any of those strategies, I can just recommend crafting at least 3 copies of that. Enjoy Tursa's incredible effect. This card is just very powerful in my opinion. Next on my list, I have a card that I consider to be the most underrated card from Tarkir Dragonstorm. I am talking about United Battlefront. This is a 4 mana sorcery. You look at the top 7 cards of your library and you put up to 2 non-creature, non-land permanent cards with mana value 3 or less from among them onto the battlefield, the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Now, anytime I mention this card, people are always quick to mention Collected Company and are just like very fastly dismissing this card because it doesn't have instant speed. I think that is just completely wrong to do. I think the cards are very different, right? Collected Company grabs creature cards, United Battlefront grabs non-creature cards. I think still a 4 mana card that allows you to get 6 mana value out of it. Plus, look at the top 7 cards, so you have a lot of, you dig pretty deep into your deck, and it will allow you to hopefully find whatever card you need in that situation specifically. So you could find a more proactive play, or you could find like a reactive play to whatever is needed in that situation that you're in. Just huge. Like 7 cards is digging really deep. So especially if your deck list is built around getting United Battlefront value, so you have a lot of, 3 mana non-creature permanents, it's going to do a lot of work, and it's always going to feel like a great tempo swing and a very favorable card to be playing. Now, I could see this into a, variety of top-tier decks already. You could maybe play it in those white token control deck lists. You could maybe even play it into Esper Self-Bounce, because, being able to look at 7 cards and grabbing whatever permanent you need can be really relevant. You could see it in those blue-white synthesizer decks. I saw a lot of content creators during the early access event played in these Jeskai copy decks that played a lot of these permanents that cared about having 3 mana, like what was it, Caretaker's Talent, and like that mouse enchantment in play and copying everything. I've seen it in, like I said, those artifact deck lists that played Simulacrum Synthesizer. Like you could grab Synthesizer and maybe that Cage card where loot is on the art. That is kind of like a removal spell, which is just huge. Like 6 mana worth of value out of a 4 mana card, and looking at 7, don't underestimate it. Yes, it's not a Coco. Yes, it doesn't have instant speed, but this is still going to be a very powerful card. If you're looking to do any of those strategies, I think United Battlefront could be a very safe craft. I wouldn't be surprised if this card is going to see play in either, you know, an already existing deck or a new deck that might emerge on the scene. Next on my list, I have a card that really impressed me during early access, but I kind of expected it, which is Frontline Rush. 2 mana instant, choose one, create 2 1/1 red goblin creature tokens, or target creature gets +X until the end of turn, where X is the number of creatures you control. Now this card is already going to slot into some powerful standard decks. Think about Boros Goblins, or Boros Tokens, or Jeskai Convoke. Basically anything that cares about having tokens on the board and is in those colors will really take advantage of Frontline Rush. I feel like the card is a strictly better Resolute Reinforcements thanks to the, the flexibility that the card provides. And yeah, in standard you don't really care too much about that human tag, like you might as well play goblins. But yeah, the potential of having a ton of tokens that are attacking on the board, and whatever doesn't get blocked by your opponent, you can just pump up based on the amount of creatures you have. It's going to take out a lot of players. I also used it a lot as just like a combat trick where I was just capable of swinging with everything despite my opponent having, blockers in play. And I could pump up my creature to either survive a blocker or trade. So I had a lot of success with this card in combination with Burnout Bastronaut, which is that 1 mana goblin that gets double strike if you have maximum speed. And yeah, being able to give +X to a creature with double strike and menace was, pretty ridiculous. So it's a very safe craft if you are in any of these strategies that I mentioned. Frontline Rush is it's just good. It's just a good card. And the last on my list of cards I don't think you can go wrong with is the Sun Pearl Kirin. It's also an uncommon, so, not too much commitment to crafting this card. It's a 2 mana 2/1 with Flash and Flying, and when this creature enters, you return up to 1 target non-land permanent you control to its owner's hand. It was a token, draw a card. This card is going to be slotted into Esper Selfbounds or maybe Ortsoff Selfbounds. I already said it in my top 10 video, but this card is just, in my opinion, better than Nurturing Pixie and better than Fear of Isolation. I think the Flash is something that I value incredibly highly, and also the potential to perhaps draw a card is also something that I wouldn't underestimate. So Sun Pearl Kirin, if you are a self-bounce player, either it's Ortsoff or Esper, I think it's a very safe card for you to end up crafting and to experiment with. So next up, we are going to have a look at cards that I think you should avoid crafting on day 1 of Tarkir, or maybe even avoid crafting in general. Now, obviously, you're free to do whatever you want. If you still want to craft these cards, do whatever. This is just my advice, because I've heard some people talk about being excited to craft these cards, because I've seen it in videos from content creators or whatever, and it looked good in there. But I think one of the big differences is that the videos that came out with these cards already are on the streamer event early access client, which is a completely different environment, a lot less competitive, a lot less tier 1 shenanigans happening, and just a lot of people having fun and trying to work with new cards rather than focusing on building a competitive deck list. That the cards that you're about to hear are going to perform quite differently, and you might waste your wild cards if you end up crafting these. But like I said, ultimately, it's your decision to make. This is just advice that I'm going to give. And the first card that I have to mention is, of course, Ugin, Eye of the Storms. 7 mana, Planeswalker, 7 loyalty. Whenever you cast a spell, you exile up to 1 target permanent that's 1 or more colors. Whenever you cast a colorless spell, exile up to 1 target permanent that's 1 or more colors. +2, you gain 3 life and you get to draw a card. 0 effect, you add 3 colorless mana. And -11, the ultimate, you search your library for any number of colorless non-land cards, exile them, then shuffle. Until the end of turn, you may cast those cards without paying their mana cost. So, whereas I think Ugin Eye of the Storms is going to be a very playable card in older formats, and a lot of people hyped about this card in Modern, for instance, in Standard, we simply do not have enough good colorless cards, and especially good colorless ramp pieces. I would say the best colorless ramp pieces that we have access to in Standard in a deck list like this is maybe the Ironcrag and Hedron Archive, but that's just 2 cards, and definitely not anything like having access to the Tron lands or whatever, or powerful Eldrazi cards that you can find. Even the minus effect from Ugin, one of the best cards that I could think of that you could grab is maybe Sire of Seven Deaths, right? There's just not enough support for this card to do much. I also think that the Standard format is just way too aggressive for something like Ugin to work. If you, in a best case scenario, end up spending 5 mana on this thing or something, or play it out on turn 5, what are you gonna do? Gain 3 life, draw a card? I think 5 or 6 mana to gain 3 life, draw a card, and maybe exile something is just not good enough for Standard. But yeah, definitely in older formats, I could see Ugin shine In Standard, I just don't think there is enough support, and I don't think the strategies in which you could play this card are really ever going to do something significant. So if you're somebody that was excited for Eugene, maybe try other formats, potentially not Standard, unfortunately. That's just my take on it. No shade to the Eugene fans, but I felt like I had to say something because I saw so many people excited for this card, and it is a really cool Planeswalker, and I do like Eugene as well, but yeah, it's just hard to see it in an environment where you could die to a turn 3, you know, double strike Heartfire hero or something, or, you know, all those self-bound stacks with a ton of interaction, and there's just a lot of creatures and a lot of pressure in the Standard format, hand disruption, and Eugene is just very hard to envision in an environment like that, especially when the supporting pieces to the card just aren't good or, you know, plenty. So, sorry, Eugene. Next on my list is a card that I actually had in my top 10 of cards that I thought were going to be the most powerful from Tarkir. But yeah, they made a rule change happen before the card ever came out because the community saw a broken interaction, and Woodsy was like, oh, no, we don't want that to take place. So we're talking about Tegum, Master Opportunist, 2 mana 2/2 with Flurry. Whenever you cast your second spell each turn, copy it, then exile the spell you cast with 4 time counters on it, and if it doesn't have suspend, it gains suspend. So the way that Tegum initially worked with the Overlords is that when you would cast an Overlord for its impending cost, it would copy the Overlord, it wouldn't see the impending counters, and you would just get a full Overlord in play as like a copy. Now, Woodsy has changed the rules so that if the impending cost was paid for a spell, it's an enchantment, and copies do know what costs are paid, so they're not entering as creatures anymore, but just as enchantments, and that basically makes it so that the Tegum interaction with the Overlords doesn't work. Now, I think obviously this is a good choice from Wizards. I'm tired of these Overlords being broken in one way or another, and I was a little bit worried about Tegum in combination with these Overlords. Fortunately, they changed the ruling before the whole thing became like legal to play. So yeah, good for us, but not good for people that wanted to craft Tegum. I think outside of the Overlord shenanigans, the card is a little bit too slow. For me, at least it felt like that. I think it becomes a lot more powerful the better your cheaper spells are. Like if I'm copying a Shock with this, or if I'm copying a Brainstorm with this, is obviously like a huge difference. So I would hold off on Tegum. Maybe somebody finds a way to break it. But yeah, my number one reason as to why I cannot recommend you crafting this on day one is because the Overlord interaction doesn't work anymore. So it is what it is. I think it's a good thing, but yeah, let me know in the comments what you think. So that was my list of cards that I would craft on day one of Tarkir Dragonstorm, and a few cards that I would avoid. But obviously, at the end of the day, you are your own person and you can make your own decisions. If the cards that you want to craft aren't on this list, or some of the cards you wanted to craft are on my avoid list, you can still do that, of course. This is just advice that I can give as somebody that's been here for many releases at this point. And some of you guys had expressed interest in me making a video like this. So I hope this is helpful for those of you that want to craft something on day one of Tarkir to play with some of the new cards. Or I've also had besties like express that they want to draft and they want to know like what cards they could like rare draft or something. So I hope for those of you this is helpful. Now I hope this video doesn't get perceived as me trying to get your wildcards out of you. I don't benefit from that at all. I'm just trying to help you guys out. And if you want to be responsible and not spend any wildcards till about like 2 weeks from now till the meta settles a little bit and the competitive results start running in, that is obviously also a very, very smart decision to make. So please don't perceive this as me trying to get your wildcards out of you. I'm just trying to be helpful for those of you that do want to, you know, craft some new cards and in what decks you could slot those cards into. So yeah, hopefully you will enjoy this. Let me know in the comments what you think of this video. And yeah, I will see you on the MTG Arena ladder battling with the new Tarkir cards. Have a great day and see you in the next one.